Howdy guys, gals, and non-binary pals. This is the Tales from the Waystone Summer Reading Program.
We are your hosts, Will and Phoenix. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the fifth installment of our series on Becky Chambers' monk and robot duology, Plaid Throw Pillow, where we'll be reading chapters 1 and 2 of the second novella, A Prayer for the Crown Shy.
Before we begin, we've got all of our explanations and disclaimers. Each week we'll be examining 2 chapters of monk and robot duology and figuring out what we can take from text to apply to our real life. We'll also take some time to focus on something that we have learned this week. And then we'll share a recommended thing of the week and finally wrap things up with a notable quotable from the book that made us smile or laugh or think. I actually think that goes before all the other stuff, but we're never going to fix this little explanation.
Nope.
Before we begin, let's get to some viewers. Well, we are no affiliate with Becky Chambers or her publisher to our book. Second of all, our discussions naturally assume that you have read all of the Psalm for the Wild Built and the first 2 chapters of A Prayer for the Crown Shy. If you haven't, well, we're going to spoil it. Anyway, word to our community, please be kind to yourselves, one another, and the creators of the world that we love exploring.
Alrighty. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into chapter 1.
Actually, before we dive into chapter 1, I want to read the dedication.
Go for it.
For anybody who doesn't know where they are going. It is important, I think, to mention that this duology, these 2 books, were written during the COVID lockdowns. So a very isolating time, right? They're very definitely of that time. I've noticed with some books, especially that have come out in the last few years, so this one came out in 2022, you can tell where the themes of isolation kind of overtook the authors, and also the themes of needing to reach out for connection. A lot of things are more contemplative. A lot of things are quieter, more thoughtful.
There is more solitude in a lot of these, and figuring out how we fit together as a community and being intentional about it.
There's also, I think, a correlation between the lockdowns and the rise of cozy books, especially cozy fantasy books, but just that I need something to help me brave the elements. And in this case, the elements are emotional and psychological elements more than they are wind and rain and snow and sleet. I think it's a bulwark.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about cozy and how...
A little bit? We've talked a lot of it.
One of the ongoing themes that we've talked about with cozy is how true cozy fiction has to have hardship elements in it. Like we see that with Monk and Robot, especially towards the end chapters of A Psalm for the Wild Built. We see sibling Dex finding comfort in the midst of decay, ruin, hardship,
difficult travels.
Yeah, and then in this particular book, as we get into chapter 1, we see the return to civilization. Sibling Dex has had their mountaintop experience, literally, and now is trying to make sense of what it means to be back in society again, and what is their place in society now that they've had this kind of transformative experience. You know, they have not just been to a literal mountaintop, but they have suddenly had a brand new experience that has altered their view of the world and their view of their place in it. This first chapter, The Highway, finds Dex and Mosscap finally back on regular roadway.
Now, are we not going to address the prayers to the gods? It's fine if we don't.
I wasn't going to. I think those are best left and contemplated yourself.
I would suggest that that's probably accurate, but I do think our perspective is interesting insofar as I think the prayer aspect is less compelling to both of us.
Mm-hmm.
The actual monk part of the T-monk and the religious aspects of the society aren't capturing us the way that they might capture someone who has a stronger connection to religion or spirituality. I think that's an important thing to at least note.
I think it's also worth noting that the prayer is more of like a mantra. The gods in this case are not literal personified beings, but rather ideals that people use to find meaning in their own lives.
More of a pantheon, more of a, my only reference as a, my own self is kind of looking at Ghibli movies and how, is it Shinto?
Shinto and certain elements of Buddhism might have this element.
But I don't want to get too far into that because I don't have a place from which to intelligently speak on it. So I think going back to the highway is a good thing now.
Okay. So yeah, I do really empathize with that notion of getting back onto a smooth road after driving on just a really rough patch for a long way. Like when we were living in Spokane, every winter there'd be this period where the roads would just be completely torn up through ice and snow and heating and thawing cycles. And so then it would turn into this great big maze of potholes and cracks. And
One thing to know about Spokane is that at least two major arteries, if not also the freeway in at least 3 different spots, are under construction every summer.
And there's that period where, yeah, they're repaving all of the damage done over the course of these long, harsh winters. And that repaving typically starts in late March to early April.
And doesn't end until like October.
But there's that one period between like October 1st and then the first solid freeze in like around November,
Possibly middle of October.
where the roads are blissfully flat and smooth.
And there hasn't been salt and plows and ice and snow.
And studded tires.
Right. And chains all over it, destroying it.
Yeah, like it's just flat and smooth. And so like when you're driving on that, like when you go from pothole, bump, crack, you name it, to suddenly just this pure flat thing, you're just like, where have you been all my life?
Even better if you're on a bike.
Yeah. Those roads, such as they are, can be really gnarly. So yeah, Dex feels this immediate relief when they get back onto these flat, maintained, manicured roadways.
And to note, they say that the roadways are these kind of cream colored. Man, okay, if you've ever ridden, like, if anything with rubber tires on something that is light colored or white and smooth, depends on how smooth. If it's like actually smooth, that is not a fun riding experience. If it's like smooth as in it's a little textured so that the wheels grip, much better riding experience. But the presumably black rubber tires are just gonna mar it the second that like 2 people have passed by.
Yeah.
So this is an idealized thing. This is not something I would consider to be terribly accurate.
I'm just going to chalk this up to futuristic material science.
That's also, yeah. I gotta love, though, Dex's experience now is kind of to go back to a sense of normalcy, of appreciation of things that they were not acknowledging previously. Now, the best analogy I have for this is, like when you have a cold and your nose is all stuffy, and you're like, I would just give anything to not have my nose be stuffy. And then, like, that first blissful day that your nose isn't stuffy.
That first time that you can both inhale and exhale through your nose, you're just like, what is that? Yeah, it's intoxicating.
That's an interesting word for it, but sure.
It's that feeling of suddenly all those experiences that you'd taken for granted, having lived deprived of them, you suddenly start to experience them a little bit differently. Going back to the whole COVID lockdown thing, like I remember after we got our vaccinations completed and everything, just being able to feel like, oh, I can go around in society again a little bit more.
still wore masks, still weren't terribly comfortable, but we could let some of our guard down.
And the return of some of those experiences that, we had not been having for quite some time, it felt good.
I think it's interesting to contrast all of the kind of reduced down things versus what we have now, because we've pretty much returned to a situation that is like before COVID societally, right? Like we've kind of bounced back, but like there's this huge blip. But I'd really like to see how that affected younger generations more than the people who have been set in their ways and have these expected versions of what society looked like for them. But I think that that's an interesting point coming back to this book of everything is the same that Dex left, except it's not the same because Dex isn't the same and what Dex is doing isn't the same. So they have had a perspective shift in this, not solely because of going to this religious monument, right? This monastery, but because of finding Moscap along the way and kind of becoming its shepherd.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that while Dex is somehow, like you say, Moscap shepherd, Moscap also takes care of Dex in all of this too. And I think one of the things that we're kind of coming to understand about Dex is that they have this very rigidly self-reliant element to them. It's very strong and deeply ingrained, but it's also very brittle. And there are limitations to that they're finally, I think, starting to really reckon with. In the first book, Dex is, I would say, a begrudging member of society at best. Like, they are met with nothing but kindness and warmth and welcome everywhere they go, and acceptance everywhere they go, but they cannot bring themselves to actually consider themselves a part of it.
They do tend to act with a remove.
And that remove seems to be an irrational fear.
Like, oh, I can't just accept kindness. It has to be transactional.
Or I can't just accept that someone cares about me.
It has to be transactional. Or I can't just enjoy or relax. I have to provide something back.
I have to prove my worth. Like, and even in those places where, nobody feels like they're taking and they feel like they're providing a lot of value, Dex almost pathologically refuses to allow themselves to set down any kind of roots within that. Like, they run away from connections that are anything more than a fleeting, temporary thing. Like, they don't, like, there are a lot of people who consider Dex a friend, but I don't think there are many, if any, that Dex considers a friend. Like, Dex, in spite of the fact of having no reason to distrust people, refuses to rely on people at all, or at least to acknowledge that they do. So this is, I think, Dex having spent some time in actual true solitude, really grappling with
I would argue that they didn't.
true. Well,
They didn't because Moscap was there. And Moscap, bless its heart or whatever it has, Moscap has the curiosity of what we usually say is like the curiosity of a child, always asking why, always asking, what's the reason for this to happen? What's the reason for that to happen? What made these decisions be things? And I'm not sure that I would strictly say childlike because I think that that gives the wrong impression.
I think the way I would put it is Moscap, it has elements that we would describe as childlike, but not necessarily childish.
But I think that that description also gets applied to autistic people a lot.
What I would say about Moscap specifically is it is possessed of endless curiosity and capacity for wonder. And so it approaches the world around it with a joy. Like, it does not approach things with judgment. It is pure curiosity and wonder.
Like, it even wonders at things like street signs.
Yeah, it doesn't take any of that stuff for granted. And I think that's perhaps where the childlike element comes in. It feels innocent, I think, is probably a good way to describe it, in the sort of It approaches everything without preconceptions. It hasn't had the weight of years of experience around this stuff telling it a whole bunch of things that may or may not be true. It doesn't have any hard set prejudices one way or the other. And so it comes at these everyday things for sibling decks from a completely fresh perspective. And the things that seem mundane and sort of boring are actually truly massively beneficial in ways that Dex has never really had to reckon with.
Moscap finds so many things to be fascinating. And I think one of my coping mechanisms for all of the new inputs that I've had to have due to medical stuff recently, due to just changes, because the world changes and things change, and we can't happily exist in a space that refuses to adapt to that. Like, if I steadfastly refused to adapt to change, I would be miserable. But change can be hard, even if it brings better things. Or having to do new things can be hard, even if it brings better things. And so the way that I've coped with a lot of the medical stuff, which a lot of people would just shut down and pretend that they didn't need to know everything and we're just going to put it all in the doctor's hands, I'd rather learn as much as I can about a thing, and I would rather approach it from a position of finding things fascinating instead of shutting it out. And I have surprised some people by making those choices. I've made some people go like, huh, not many people would think of it like that or whatnot. Like, that's a different way of looking at it. Or that's a, like, oh God, you read all of my doctor's notes. Why did you do that? And I'm like, because I was curious.
I think Dex also finds Moscap's perspective a welcome tonic. Like, it is something that they have not really grappled how much they have relied on the society around them until they've had this experience of deprivation and had the experience of having to truly rely on somebody else explicitly. Like, they have had to place trust in Moscap in ways that maybe they have done implicitly but never consciously with anybody else in their life. And so I think Moscap has helped reorient a lot of what Dex has come to realize about themselves and where they fit into things. And it's just a big shift.
So I guess the next idea in my head of how this could be thought of. So, like, both of us have gone to theme parks, we've gone together, we've gone separately as adults, but there is something very appealing, and like, I really want to, of we have little nieces, and one of them just got to go to Disneyland as a 5-year-old and experience all of the stuff that a 5-year-old can experience. And the next one, it might be 4 or 5 years from now, but I would love to go with, a 5 or 6-year-old to a theme park like Disneyland. And also, by that point, the current 5-year-old will be about a 10-year-old, and that will also be a different perspective that I would love to see, because it's like seeing the magic through their eyes instead of through a perspective that has already become cynical.
Yeah, yeah. Like, one of the things that I also really resonated here with was just when Dex and Moscap break camp for the night. They fall into this rhythm.
I do love that. It turns out that Dex has a rather bad habit of forgetting their towel.
And Moscap compensates for that and accommodates that and has the towel ready to go.
Like, places it on the hook for Dex. Like, this isn't a creepy thing. This is oh, I know this person well enough to know that they're going to forget this thing that they need, and I can take care of this thing that they need.
And meanwhile, Dex is able to trust Moscap with making the fire and cooking dinner. And all of these are things that, yes, sibling Dex is capable of doing for themselves, but they don't have to.
There you go. That's the thing. They don't have to. I think they have an internal drive that says they have to. And somehow with Moscap, just doing the things, it undoes the I have to just a bit.
And there's one other little bit I'd like to touch on that isn't really deep, but is at least extremely relatable. It is the experience of coming back from a vacation to find that your email inbox is just absolutely swamped. You're going to have to spend a lot of time going through all of this.
Yeah, I have a
Fork.
ton of marketing emails that come into my, I've had it since I was a teenager email. And like it's ridiculous amounts every day where if I don't keep up with just deleting stuff or trying to unsubscribe from stuff or trying to decide whether or not I actually want to unsubscribe, because sometimes I want those emails, but it's just like delete, 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 delete. And sometimes that can take 10 minutes and sometimes that can take longer than 10 minutes. And then you have to decipher what things so that you're not just going delete, delete, delete. Oh, that was important. Crap.
Undo, undo.
Undo, undo, undo. How many? Oh, now I have to go look in my trash bin.
Yeah.
How long ago was that sent? Dang it.
I mean, my work email has certain folders that are hundreds of thousands of messages deep unread.
Gross. That has to bother you so bad.
I periodically clean them up and fully delete them, and it's like they're stuff that just goes into those automatically, and it's some of it is stuff that is theoretically potentially important up to a point, but I don't necessarily need it every day. I don't need to read every single one of those, but it's good to have a record that they exist. Yeah.
That's frustrating.
Yeah, and that's why I have rules for those. But yeah, my actual meaningful emails are typically much more manageable.
But still coming back to that after vacation is...
Coming back after taking a week off, even, it's oftentimes a lot because you have a whole bunch of things, not just things that are there for you to passively read, but things that are actually demanding an active response. And in this case, Dex has quite a few that are demanding responses, because one of the first things they did when they got back into basic satellite range was notify all of the respective organizations and bodies that might be interested to know that, hey, the robots are back.
Or at least a robot is back.
And it has questions.
It would like to speak with us.
And not in any sort of mean way, just it's curious, it wants to see how we're doing.
Yep.
And wants to see the big question, what do people need?
Which I think there's one last little bit that I want to talk about within the first chapter. And it's again with that mantra instead of it necessarily being what we think of as a prayer. Dex is going through all the things that they are thankful for. They are thankful for the soap that they have that is kind of a luxurious thing for them. They are happy to just have a shower. They are thankful for like the anti-itch cream for the bug bites. And at the end of that chapter, they say, praise Alleluia for the company. They've been so isolated that having Moscap, who just falls right into that routine with them, is a major boon to them, and they're able to recognize it.
Yeah, Moscap has proven to be a trustworthy friend, and I think it's probably the first friend that sibling Dex has truly recognized, and I think that's important. And I think that's part of their journey here. So let's go ahead and talk about the Woodland chapter 2.
I don't want to spend too much time because we've kind of gotten bits and pieces like from everything, but I do want to call out one part for sure. There is a shrine to Bosch, who is one of the gods in this world, and the traditions around it don't really matter for what I'm going to say, but Moscap questions those traditions. Why do you do this thing if your god isn't going to notice? And Dex points out that the shrine is not for the god. The shrine is for the people.
Yeah, I think that's the difference in the prayer. So this is not an entreaty for divine intervention, but rather it is a means of trying to connect to something transcendent and thus change your life in some capacity.
The way that Dex put it is that we have to take a sec to tap into the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's that it is not about speaking, it's about listening, and it's about giving you a framework to help you understand things. So again, it's not about a literal personification of something. It's about this larger idea that's a useful framework to help you find wisdom and comfort and prosperity.
And that sometimes that object that you've assigned meaning to is like a focus for all of that.
It's a construct, much like Moscap. And if we go back to the sort of that opening prayer and that sort of ongoing theme, constructs help us to complete things, to do things, and they help us with mysteries. But the mysteries give those constructs meaning.
I'd also say that they give us shortcuts. And I think that it's a very astute thing for Moscap to be questioning those constructs, those shortcuts, and asking why. Because, like, we have shortcuts and constructs in our society. And when some people don't adhere to those, there are people who are so tied to those constructs that they can't accept anything different, anything outside of them. And then there are people who don't fit within those constructs, who just want to reframe things in a way that they do fit.
I mean, a good way to think of it is like a lever is a simple machine that allows you to lift things. It's a construct that allows you to lift far more than you would with just your arms or whatever, or just your body. But the lever isn't the only way to lift things, and it's not always the best way to lift things. So understanding how the construct works and how it fits in and understanding where its limitations are is important. It doesn't mean that it's meaningless or useless, but it means that you have to recognize that the construct isn't the boundary that a lot of people think it is. It's a useful tool for certain things, and understanding where the limits of that utility are is important.
Well, finally, we are going to talk about how when Moscap is presented to a town, a crowd gathers to greet both Dex and Moscap, and they almost are reverent to a point where they think that, like, Moscap is going to just be this profound being. And then a dog barks.
Poor Biscuit.
Poor Biscuit. They are confused. Biscuit is not understanding of what's going on in the way that, like, the humans are, even though the humans don't really get it, you know? And Moscap could not care less about the way that it appears to the crowd when it just goes over and tries to comfort the dog, right? Like, it's not trying to offend this group of people. It's trying to have empathy for this animal that is confused and being aggressive because of it. It's taking the least amongst the group and caring for that.
I think it's also worth remembering that up until this point, Moscap has had more experience with creatures like dogs than it has with humans.
Accurate.
And so then we get this scene of Moscap getting down on its back and showing its belly, and then providing scritches. Lots and lots of scritches. And at that point, Moscap and Biscuit are friends now.
Yes, I agree. We're friends now. Yes.
I think that just sort of moment of responding to fear with kindness, thoughtfulness, really shows the people that this is not like Gort from The Day the Earth Stood Still. This is just a curious creature that wants to know things, wants to be friends. And when Moscap asks its big question, what do you need? It's met with a laundry list.
From the people, to be clear, not from the dog.
Correct. And, you know, a lot of people are asking for help with things, and
they're kind of mundane things. These are things that they probably could get help from, like, the community members, but no one is thinking to ask. No one is thinking to ask, what do others need? And no one is thinking to ask, will others help me with my needs? But Moscap goes in with that purpose asking, what do you need? And again, it's not this existential, huge, like, what are your societal needs? This turns out to be like Moscap spends a day helping repair doors.
It's acting in many cases as like a second set of hands, or someone who is helping to reach something that the other person can't.
Something that you absolutely know everything about because you are the tall person.
Yeah, I got some experience with that. I guess the important thing to get into here is the PEBS system.
Right. So we go from I'm going to help you out of the kindness of my heart to people giving, it's almost like kudos because it is money. Let's be clear, this is money. But when Moscap asks Dex, so this is like money, Dex is immediately like, no, 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 no. Because there is like this societal trauma that they think this new system, which is the old system, but it's new system, is fixing, but with a little bit of a twist. It's not predatory in the way that money and money lenders and creditors and credit systems are predatory in our current society. It's very altruistic. It's even if you don't have any to give, you can still partake in the things that you need.
I think it's more about using a currency as a way to track participation and to show connection as opposed to a way to show ownership.
Or punish people.
There's nothing coercive about it. It's more just a way to say, yeah, this is how you partake in society. This is how you show your connection and how you show people gratitude for their assistance. There's an honor system element to it. And I think one of the things that I found really poignant here is like there's a bit where Dex acknowledges that, yeah, there are going to be times where people are making more withdrawals than they're making deposits, as in they are creating a debt for themselves because of need, because they simply don't have the means to do these things on their own. And that is okay. Like that there is nothing morally wrong with being in that scenario, for having to spend PEBs that you don't have, because we're all going to periodically go into those points where we're going to need more help than we can give at the moment or for the foreseeable future. And it doesn't make you less of a person. It doesn't make you any less valuable or of worth. It doesn't give the people that you have benefited from ownership over you or control over you.
I think that that's where I have such a hard time within our current financial situation, not our personal one, but like the way that, at least in the US, things have been set up to punish those who need and benefit those who can give. And there's like this little floaty middle spot where you're actually in a spot of relative stability where you don't experience the high gains from giving to disenfranchised people and expecting high amounts back. And you're not in the category of the disenfranchised. And so it's easy to put on blinders and pretend that they don't exist, that neither side exists, and neither side should be reformed. But we have both been, not in the top part, but in the lower part, through different parts of our lives and seen it from the inside. It is punishing to be in a cycle where the only way to afford food is to use a credit card that will make it so that that food costs 20% or 40% or 100% more in the long term, because income levels don't match debt levels. Like, increasing income levels doesn't happen fast, but racking up debt happens fast. When I worked for a bank call center, the most heartbreaking thing in the entire experience was just the sheer number of people who were living on Social Security, who immediately their Social Security only went to pay off the overdraft fees that they incurred. Because, like, if you overdraw your account once and then it just racks up a $30 charge, well, now you're down another $30. And this was nearly 20 years ago. So, like, who knows what what it's like now. But like every transaction, and sure, they capped you at like 5 a day, $150 a day of transactions where you don't have any control over when the transaction occurs because you put in the transaction, it depends on the company when that debit will come out. And it's just, even if they put in the money that they think that will cover it, oftentimes it will just not be enough to cover all the expenses, or they put in enough to cover what they've purchased, but the fees eat it before the debit's due. And it is frustrating and heartbreaking. And if they could just have a clean slate, then there is a higher potential that they could survive without this constant cycle. And it's frustrating to me as a person watching every time I want to buy something online. Oh, you could just split this into 4 payments and then it will cost 20% more over time. And knowing how many people have to do that in order to get their needs met. Or, hey, you bought $3 worth of something from us. Would you like to sign up for a credit card? No.
I think the big difference between the PEB system and our current capital system is that in present day economics, when you are in the red, you owe currency or favor to whoever did the thing for you.
Whoever provided the credit, whoever provided the service, whoever provided whatever.
Whereas with PEBs, the idea is that whatever debt you owe is not to a single individual, but rather to society at large. So that means that a debt that you incur going to the coffee shop, for instance, could be repaid by helping a friend take care of their garden. And it's about thinking of, instead of the bank being this big money controlling thing, the bank is the community. It's the communal good. Like, this is actually something interesting that one of my coworkers and I have been playing around with for managing our on-call rotations and on-call shift work. So the traditional model is, you have your set shifts, and if you need to take time off for whatever reason, you find someone to swap shifts with, and then it's a one-to-one swap. And that's all well and good until you start getting into more complex situations where you aren't necessarily going to be able to get someone who can immediately take one-to-one. Like if you need to take 2 weeks, like it's going to be very hard to find someone who can take all 2 weeks right off the bat. So instead, what we've found is that there's a way to balance it basically by making a bank of time that the whole team shares. And the balance on that share needs to read 0 at all times, even if your individual withdrawals and deposits may be plus or minus. So if you take time off, you go a bit into the red for however much time you've taken off, and whoever covers for you at that point has suddenly a positive amount in the bank. Again, it's all going to come out to 0. And so then when the person with positive amounts needs to take time off for whatever reason, someone with a negative balance can always chip in, whoever that might be.
I would say that it doesn't even matter if your balance is negative or positive in those situations.
Right.
What I'm saying, though, is that it's more like your 5 and 10 situation with your buddy.
Right. It is kind of like that.
Sorry, explain this.
So a few years back, many years back at this point, because we started doing this in our 20s, my best friend and I would, we'd go out to breakfast or lunch or dinner. And this was before, things like the Cash App or Venmo or whatever, where, splitting up a bill was something that could be done easily electronically. Because typically one person would pay the bill in a card and then the other person would give cash back. And so, it started out with, we had a $5 bill, like we'd go to lunch, it'd be my turn to pay on the card. And so my friend would give me $5 in cash, except I don't really spend money in cash and neither does my friend. So the next time would come around and he would pay, and then I would pay $5. It'd be the same $5 bill. And then eventually we, like after a few instances of this, we realized that the $5 bill had nothing to do with the actual value of the food that we had eaten. At this point, it was just a marker of whose turn it was to buy dinner. And so back and forth it would go as we exchange, like, and so that at various points the $5 bill was worth anywhere between, there's that brief sushi related economic collapse where it fell down to a negative value, and then there was another where we bumped it up to the point where it was worth about $50. And it just became a thing where we looked for ever increasing ways to grow its value. And it became sort of this weird thing. And I still have this 5 in my wallet to this very day. We don't see each other as often, but it's always there. So that means he owes me dinner next time. But yeah, it's been an ongoing.
I think actually he did pay for a dinner for us recently. And by recently, I mean a year ago.
Maybe 6 months.
July.
I think we covered back for it though.
Oh, in November.
In November, yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's just, yeah, this is, I think it feels more like that, where the value of a PEB does not necessarily mean like a one-to-one value of the service. Like you don't have to, oh, someone helped me put up a door, so now I have to help somebody else put up a door. But the next little bit is, oh, now we have to get you an account, which means that we have to get you a pocket computer. You are a robot, and I am saying that we need to get you a pocket computer. And then the more funny thing to me, can you teach me how to use it? A robot is asking a human to teach it how to use a computer.
And then, but wait, I don't have pockets.
No, I just have this cavity in the middle of my chest that I can hold
Sure.
in. This is a very, like, interesting way of looking at how we take things and think of them as transactional that don't necessarily need to be transactional to work. The last little bit. So I have 3 belongings now. Can I get a satchel? And then, Moscap also jokes like, I'm going to need a wagon. And Dex is like, please no. I think that for the most part, to get the full enjoyment of this, honestly, just read the book. The two together aren't very long. And I think that they make at least us think a lot. And I appreciate that so much. There's so many things to kind of latch onto and discuss. And one of the bigger parts to me is that highlight of generosity and curiosity.
These are little books with big ideas. And I think it's as much about how to accept generosity as how to give it. And that's, I think, what Sibling Dex is trying to learn here.
I think that that's what Dex is struggling with.
And I think also trying to find purpose, because the thing that they had been doing is no longer doing it for them. And the resolution that they come to here is maybe the purpose that they're looking for is, they've found it. Maybe it's not being a T-monk. Maybe it is helping Moscap learn about humanity and learning with Moscap again, reconnecting with humanity in that way.
And maybe also their purpose can be mercurial.
It need not be fixed. And I think it's also okay to live in that state of being lost. It's okay to be in that state of not knowing. And I know that can be very difficult to accept. Uncertainty is seldom comfortable, but it is a fact of life. It is one of the few hard and fast facts of life. Sometimes you will not know what's going on, and that will happen more often than you expect or than you hope. And you have to accept that you may not know for a time, and you may not know ever, and that's okay. So with that, I believe it's your turn for notable quotables. What did you pick?
There are a couple things that I want to, at least highlight. One of the little kid yells out to Moscap when Moscap's like, what can I help you all with? Can you help me with my math? Yes, I can try and... No, I'm afraid not. Math is not my strong suit. Our conception of what a robot is a being made of code, or at least that's my perception, right? Code is math. Code and Moscap not knowing how to do math. Like, Moscap is like, sure, I can help you hang a door. Sure, I can do all these other things that I've never done in my entire existence. No, I can't do math. There's a point where Moscap asks, would you like me to make food while you bathe? And Dex replies, you really don't have to. Of course I don't have to, Moscap scoffed, clearly finding Dex's reluctance on this front ridiculous. Would this be a good meal? That would be perfect, thanks. Moscap, I think, shows the impatience of someone who is like, but I want to help. Could you knock it the fork off? And it's something that I've also struggled in the same way that Dex is struggling, right? Like, I don't want people to do things for me in a way that is assuming I can't do it.
I pull wagon.
Correct. I be 2-year-old. But like, there is a difference between letting someone enable you and letting someone help you and letting someone do a thing that they are enjoying for you. Like, you make dinner a lot. You're good at it. But every once in a while, I'm like, but I'm going to make dinner.
And I appreciate it when you do.
And it gives me the opportunity to do something nice for you, even though you never really ask me to do it.
I appreciate it.
Right. It's not that you're not going to appreciate it. It's that you don't go out of your way to say, hey, could you make dinner tonight? You go and say, thanks for making dinner tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And then just the last little bit of, could I have a satchel? Yeah, you can have anything you want. They paused, but not a wagon. I pull wagon. In fact, actually, I think that is an apt thing to point out about Dex. I pull wagon.
Yeah. But I do also love the sort of gentle camaraderie that Dex and Moscap have developed between one another.
Alrighty. And with that, have you learned something this week?
Yes, I have. So I recently read an article here about how coffee is actually a lot better for you than we oftentimes think. I've provided a gift link so that you can read it. It's normally behind a paywall. This is in Vox.
I'm going to warn people, whether or not I remember to include this link in anything, it might be best on the Patreon. Not sure. But if you want to read this with the paywall down, I will try to remember. Oh, or the Discord.
Discord would be ideal for that.
Yeah, Discord's better.
Yeah. So it opens with, there are few news subjects more reliably depressing than nutritional science. And the message seems to be that if a food or drink gives you even an iota of pleasure, it's almost certain that your body will pay for it sooner or later.
Yeah, I hate that.
And for the past century, coffee has really fallen into that category, with cardiologists warning of heart disease and oncologists labeling it a possible carcinogen, and pregnant people being warned not to consume it. So it's a stimulant, yeah, but there were 20th century studies that linked coffee consumption to pancreatic cancer, bladder cancer, and birth defects. But none of these studies have held up to scrutiny, and it's simply because of confounding factors. Because for much of the 20th century, coffee went with cigarettes like peanut butter goes with jelly, except in this case, peanut butter is largely innocuous, while jelly is actively trying to murder you. So based on data collected between 1976 and 1980, heavy coffee drinkers in the US were 6 to 7 times more likely to be smokers than non-coffee drinkers. And
Interesting.
Yeah.
That itself is, huh.
Yeah, coffee and cigarettes used to be a major thing. So all that smoking among coffee drinkers in the past meant that they were also much more likely to suffer heart disease or cancer than any other health threat that cigarettes are connected to, and that showed up in the studies. But it wasn't the cup of coffee doing the damage, it was the cigarette that they were smoking alongside it.
Gotta control for certain factors.
Yeah. So as smoking broadly has collapsed, a new generation of better designed studies took a clearer view of coffee's health effects.
I have heard a depressing thing that younger people are smoking again.
Right, because they've been scared about popcorn lung from their Juul.
Yeah. I'm like, no.
But what they found is that major prospective cohort studies that followed enormous populations for decades with smoking properly accounted for, looking at coffee consumption against outcomes ranging from dementia to liver cancer to all-cause mortality, found that results were almost embarrassingly consistent in coffee's favor. The recently released USDA dietary guidelines officially classify unsweetened coffee as healthy, and consumption of up to roughly 4 cups a day is considered safe for most adults. And even pregnant people can enjoy a cup or two a day.
Wow.
Yeah,
I thought that never my understanding of what people who are pregnant can have and cannot have is like little because I've never had to experience it for myself nor anyone close to me. So I just know that there's a lot of restrictions.
the caveat here, of course, is this is unsweetened coffee. So that means
Joyless coffee.
just black coffee, no sugar, no milk, or milk substitute. Because that's the other, again, confounding factors. Like it,
Coffee on its own probably as good for you as tea is on its own.
right. But it's all the other stuff that people add onto it. So like if you go into Starbucks or whatever and you get a giant frappuccino that's loaded up with a whole bunch of sugar and cream and everything.
That's not coffee, that's a milkshake.
Yeah, just own it. You're drinking a worse milkshake.
It's not a worse milkshake. I actually like it's just not as thick,
Right, that's a good milkshake.
says a person who can have dairy.
Yeah. I I agree. Point I'm making though is that like the coffee itself is actually pretty good for you in moderation. And as the saying always goes, it's the dose that makes the poison. You have too much of anything and it can be dangerous.
I mean, water is poisonous if you have too much of it.
Exactly.
Or not strictly poisonous. Water has negative health effects. I don't know what the classification is.
Yeah, it wouldn't strictly be a toxin or a poison or whatever, but
No, it just dilutes all your electrolytes to the point where you just.
yeah, point being, moderate coffee drinking is not inherently bad. It's everything else that goes along with it that could be your problem.
That is an interesting point. Also, self reporting studies are less reliable.
That's always a methodological problem, yes.
And so a lot of people will like, oh, this I shouldn't say how much I smoke, or I should, limit the amount that I tell people that I smoke if I'm going to be honest that I do smoke or whatever. And so a lot of the times, like the assumption is that you're going to make yourself look better by trying to reduce the bad things and trying to increase the good things on like a self-reporting survey. And so you got to account for that too.
And that's just it though. If those compounding factors really are something that people are hiding, so smoking or adding extra additives or whatever to their coffee, you would expect worse outcomes, and yet we actually had good outcomes. So that's, like I say, methodological problems aside, there is still something to the fact that people were having more positive long-term outcomes over the course of decades here, which I think has some interesting findings there. So yeah, learned something interesting there. And like for me, really, the as much as the specific outcomes are interesting, it is also just the confounding factors element is just one of those other constant reminders that correlation is not the same as causation, and understanding that it is one thing to claim to take a data driven view of the world, but without context for your data, you're not going to have very good understandings of things. And you may oftentimes be missing a lot of crucial context.
Right. The context is important for sure. There is a tendency that I have to over explain myself because I don't want people to misconstrue things. And I think there is a line to be tread here between over explaining and under explaining in order to get your point across. But it's also a way that people manipulate data.
Mm-hmm. Well, or not even manipulate, but just unconsciously miss things because they're just not aware of things.
You're taking my statement of manipulate or my wording of manipulate to mean malicious or intent. It's not always an intentional manipulation of data.
That's fair. Anyway, I just thought it was really fascinating and it's a fun thing to think about. So you have thing of the week. What'd you pick?
All right, so I originally had an idea of what I was going to say, and then we had to shove recording off for a week, and I found a new thing. And so, in classic neurodivergent ways of being, I have latched on to said new thing. Said new thing is a show called Widow's Bay on Apple TV. It is bonkers. It is kind of a horror comedy, but like a witty comedy, like a dry wit to it rather than being like slapstick. It's not like Scary Movie. It's more like Twin Peaks. It's bizarre, and I'm still trying to figure out what's happening. And there's definitely mystery to it. And it's kind of one of those ones where you're like, is this a head trip, or is this happening for real in their lives, or are they all under this mass suggestion almost? What is happening? Is all of this real? And then they play with tropes really well, and it's the writing is excellent, the ideas are excellent, the ways that they play with expectations, think that you're going to go down one road and then you go down a different road, but then you're actually going down the first road, is also like it's
I guess the vibe that I would describe it as, it's Stephen King meets Jaws meets Arrested Development.
And I'd say that Stephen King, in the way that, what was it, Haven? Is that the TV show that we watched that was like smaller town, like coastal town?
There's that one, or Castle Rock.
I think it was Haven,
Okay.
because it feels more like the I mean, horror in this is like, it's so very light horror. It's more psychological and more creepy, but it is not like super frightening. It's not like the new It series at all. The new It series is horror and gore, where like this is more, it does rely on jump scares and it does rely on just creepy setting.
There's a lot of atmosphere.
Yeah.
The other thing that it reminds me a lot of is Cabin in the Woods.
Except I'd say that there's still less slapstick,
Yeah,
because I think that there's a lot more like almost physical humor in Cabin in the Woods.
true. But it does have, I think, the level of genre awareness.
Yes.
And that's kind of where I'm getting at it. Like, it's that, like, the main character is aware that, oh, all of this stuff you're talking sounds absolutely ridiculous. It's like something out of a horror movie, you know?
Yeah, it's self-referential.
Yeah. So the basic plot takes place on the titular island of Widow's Bay, which is this island off the coast of Massachusetts, which is supposedly cursed, and no one who is born there can ever actually leave the island.
There's no Wi-Fi, there's no cell service, there's no nothing.
It's pretty remote. And so the mayor, Tom Loftus, is trying to brand the island potentially as basically a new Martha's Vineyard.
A tourist spot. And I think that that's like the most I want to do overview of it. It is delightfully creepy and I love the wit. And so when we ran out of them to watch, I was like, but what, but next one, Wednesday. But no, because we also have City Council of Darkness on Wednesdays,
Bah.
which I don't know if we've recommended that, but man, Dimension 20 doing Vampire the Masquerade TTRPG is great. And we'll probably recommend that next time. I don't know.
Yes, I agree.
Since it's Will's turn to recommend things. But yeah, I usually I don't associate this time of year with like all the spooky stuff and whatnot, but like it's been a delight.
I've really enjoyed it as well. So, good recommendation.
Thank you.
And with that, I'd like to thank you for potting with me.
Thank you for potting with me.
And thanks for listening to Tales from the Waystone. Join us next time as we cover chapters 3 and 4 of A Prayer for the Crown Shy.
I would like to also mention that usually by episode 5, we've had an idea of what the next book is going to be. What I think, because of all of the things, this year has been a year, y'all. I don't know. I think I'm going to actually confer with Will about either a book that neither of us has read that's in our house, or one that he's read that I've never read, that he would recommend that I read, that he thinks that I would enjoy reading, that I haven't seen a movie for. So we're not going to jump in on the Project Hail Mary, because I would like to have a reason to read something I haven't read. And I think the two of us are going to kind of hunker down and make our own decision on this one. If you all have any suggestions of things that either I should read or we should read for the podcast, please share them on the Discord, because I have been in a horrible reading slump since last November. And it does have to do with like a lot of medical stress and a lot of other just brain foggy things. And I miss it. But with that, I'd like to thank our friend Shawnee Jang for creating our theme music.
And many thanks to Becky Chambers for creating this universe that we're exploring.
Audio production and editing courtesy of me, Phoenix McCullough. Apologies if this is poorly edited, because I had like a day to do it. Oops.
And writing and project management courtesy of me, Will McCullough.
If you would like to help support us and have the means to do so, please consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page, or just Discord. Discord's better. Discord is nice because then you can all talk to us, and also like find out things about, like, there's been people sharing trivia, and we share a lot of memes, and I would like to see your memes, and like, again, book recommendations or crafts that you're doing, just to share and have more community. But with that, here's to one more day above the roses.
To one more day above the roses.
Ding!
Good job.
Yay! Let's test out the new windscreen. Very, very weird. Very, very, very weird that there is no trace of the old one.
It disintegrated. It was kicked apart by Bigfoot.
Kumite.
Master of Kumite. It's kicked to pieces by Bigfoot.
It's in a pocket dimension.